You think you know the Wild West, a world of heroic cowboys, epic shootouts, and golden saloons. But there was a darker, more persistent enemy lurking in the shadows, and in the sunlight, and in every single home. This was a war fought not with 6 shooters, but with splintered wood, contaminated water, and shared towels. An enemy so pervasive it was in the beds they slept in, the air they breathed, and the very water they drank. Today, we're not telling the story of the legends who tamed the West, but the grim, gritty, and shocking reality of how they lived. This is the untold story of the hidden enemy of the Wild West. But before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to help support our community. Beds were often inhabited by seam squirrels, a colloquial term for lice. Although not every bed in the American West was constructed from straw and hay, a great many possessed this simple makeup. Bedding, unfortunately, was seldom laundered, resulting in invasions by lice and other pests. Among these irritants, lice, occasionally called seam squirrels in jest, were prominent, representing just a single faction of the bothersome insect armies that compromised hygiene in the Wild West. Flies infiltrated food supplies and human waste, combined with the persistent intrusion of mosquitoes into poorly sealed dwellings. The accounts of Rose Pender, a traveler in the American West from 1883 to 1888, vividly illustrate these hardships. She described an evening when her sleep was interrupted by a swarm of insects, allowing her very little repose. Screens on windows were a rarity, which meant such pests moved without restraint between living quarters and privies, depositing traces of whatever they had previously encountered. Outhouses were sites of foul smells and insects. Privies were a fundamental component of frontier life, though some settlers chose to use the wilderness as their restroom. Located near houses and homesteads, outhouses were placed to maximize both practicality and security. Their assembly required digging a deep hole with a simple wooden shack built above it. Once the hole was full, it was hastily covered and the wooden building was relocated over a fresh cavity, usually excavated close by. Foul smells saturated these outhouses, leading to efforts to counteract the odor with sprinklings of lye or lime. Occupants coexisted in these confined spaces with various bugs, especially flies and the infamous black widow spiders. The latter, always ready to inflict a painful nip, were a genuine worry for anyone using the wooden seat. Modern toilet paper was not available. Resourceful alternatives were the norm. Items like leaves, corn cobs, and grass were commonly employed for personal hygiene. Clean water was a scarce resource. Within the challenging environment of the Wild West, water access was essential for life, yet locating a pure supply was frequently difficult. The very privies built by settlers with practical intent sometimes contaminated adjacent water supplies, often without the knowledge of the people who depended on them. More issues came from standing water, an ideal nursery for flies and other bugs that deposited grime and refuse while swarming over pools. Furthermore, rainwater was gathered in cisterns, where it remained pure until dirt and other impurities infiltrated it. To conserve water, everyday routines were adapted. Cleaning clothes and dishes became a lower priority, and even the water for bathing was repurposed. It was typical for a whole family to use a single basin of water, with the chance to bathe weekly being a welcome event. When soap was produced, it was created from animal tallow and botanicals. Frank Clifford, an individual also recognized as John Minim Whiteman and John Francis Wallace, wrote an account detailing his time in the American West. A companion of Billy the Kid, Clifford revealed fascinating observations about Mexican women who used soapweed obtained from the yucca plant to wash their hair. Adopting this natural solution, Clifford personally underwent several hair washings using soapweed root. This shampoo resulted in hair that was soft, clean, and shiny. While some individuals utilized soapweed, pioneers in their communities made soap from animal fat, which also served a secondary function as a material for candles. This homemade soap was abrasive and likely to cause skin inflammation, existing with minimal focus on improving its composition. Personal scent was accepted as an unavoidable aspect of living. Mirroring this perspective, a common conviction held that excessive cleanliness made one susceptible to germs and sickness, promoting a widespread reluctance to bathe regularly. Communal cloths were utilized for removing beer froth. Saloons in the Wild West lacked stools, but they featured a lower rail for leaning against and also contained spittoons. Along the top of the bar, there might have been a cuspidor, a second rail, or an arrangement of hooks. These last two fixtures were intended to hold towels that patrons employed to clean their lips of any leftover beer foam. These towels saw use by innumerable individuals, inadvertently aiding the spread of germs and sickness through their communal application. Spitting was so pervasive that it required prohibition. In saloons across the western frontier, men expelled tobacco onto the floor where spittoons and cuspidors were positioned along the bar's front. Expectoration was concealed with sawdust, but this grew troublesome as respiratory illnesses like pneumonia and tuberculosis spread widely. The sawdust, initially a harmless covering, turned into a productive environment for pathogens. Saloons frequently rented their floor space to travelers. People slept surrounded by the filth on the ground. In an effort to stop the rampant spitting, some locations attempted to outlaw the activity. Such prohibitions even applied to train platforms and depots, where spitting could result in a severe penalty of a $600 fee, a year in jail, or a combination of both. The Wild West was plagued by dust. Dust was a pervasive issue in the Wild West. Dust storms and powerful gusts would frequently lift dirt and carry enormous clouds into the atmosphere and into dwellings. This dust posed a danger not just to the settlers, but also to their livestock. As Sarah Atherton, her spouse Jed, and their children traveled over the western terrain, Sarah's eyes suffered a burning sensation, as recorded in Mary Ellen Jones's daily life on the 19th century American frontier. Dust permeated everything, and since midday she had been facing directly into the sun. Her sun hat provided very little defense. Poor dental health was simply a standard condition in the West. Implements such as toothbrushes, toothpaste, and dental floss were not commonplace in the Wild West. When issues with teeth occurred, a straightforward and quite severe remedy was typically employed: pulling the tooth. Without access to contemporary dental care, people sought out barbers and even blacksmiths, versatile individuals who used tools resembling pliers to extract aching teeth. No anesthetic was administered, though a generous drink of whiskey might lessen the pain. While options to avoid extraction were available, dental care was a very low priority for the majority. At stagecoach stations and public venues, individuals would utilize a shared toothbrush, and particles of food stuck in teeth were dislodged using knives. Cholera and similar illnesses were significant concerns. The tasks of washing clothes, managing waste, and cleaning dishes often depended on the same water intended for consumption, unintentionally enabling sickness to move through camps and communities. During the 19th century, a company of Mormon travelers was struck by the fatal disease of cholera, which they interpreted as divine retribution. At the same time, this sickness caused severe devastation within Native American communities. Although it was a common infection, it did not cause as many native fatalities as the smallpox virus did. Absence of illness in a location was viewed as a fortunate miracle. Sarah Raymond Herndon wrote, "There is no sickness in our camp whatsoever. It is astonishing how remarkably healthy we all are. I truly hope it remains this way." The persistent hold of this sickness resulted in many deaths, and the root cause was linked to inadequate sanitation and contaminated water. Women generally maintained better hygiene than men. Cowhands, troops, and other males in the Wild West frequently endured extended durations without washing. The rigors of their occupations afforded little opportunity for such an indulgence, and when a bath was possible, outdoor sources like creeks and rivers served the purpose. This was manageable in the warm summer season, but in the colder winter it was unfeasible, so men hardly ever bathed. Conversely, women maintained a more conscientious attitude toward their cleanliness. It was their common practice to visit a spring or creek each day to cleanse their faces and have a drink. Because they lacked any private space, they did not bathe fully on a frequent schedule, yet females generally preserved a superior level of personal hygiene relative to the men. Furthermore, women demonstrated increased care in washing their garments. Soldiers and cowhands possessed limited time and typically owned just one outfit, which resulted in the cleaning of clothes in a nearby creek or river happening only on rare occasions. Ethnic origins also shaped cleanliness routines. In 2005, a set of tweezers was uncovered by archaeologists at a location in Deadwood. This artifact pointed to the substantial Chinese community that resided and labored in Deadwood, along with certain aspects of their everyday life. As stated by Don Ivy, the academic who discovered the tweezers, Chinese men preferred to pluck their facial hair rather than shave. They additionally employed the tweezers for partaking in opium, but it is thought the specific tweezers discovered were utilized for female grooming for those same historical purposes. Certain males sported characteristically long hair. Noted individuals from the Wild West period, including James Butler, Wild Bill Hickok, and George Armstrong Custer, were recognized for their exceptionally long hair, a signature trait. It is noted that Custer applied cinnamon oil to impart a pleasant fragrance to his hair. Whenever cowboys made trips into settlements, a generous selection of personal luxuries was available to them. These included barbering services, shaves, in addition to heated baths, new clothing, and fine food. Sometimes the use of a scented hair oil would complete the transformation. By the latter part of the 19th century, long hair fell from fashion, and men commenced trimming their hair routinely. The prevailing theory is that men started to keep their hair shorter as a renunciation of pre-war conventions. We've romanticized the West, but its true battle was against an invisible frontier of filth. It makes you wonder. With all our modern comforts, have we lost that gritty resilience? What could you never have endured? Tell us below.